Christmas. I hope you all had a good New Year's. Strike wanted to hit me up. He's been talking about doing a video on personal member responsibility in motorcycle clubs. And so let's jump into our intro and we'll grab Strike and we'll get going on this. So. What's up, everybody? We got Strike here. What's going on, Strike?
What's going on?
How was your Christmas break and your holidays?
Oh, too short, though. You know, it always is.
Yeah. I agree. Busy. Hey, what's up, Ryan? Welcome.
What's going on, man?
All right, Strike. We've got a couple topics you want to talk about after some events that have happened, in the last year. We just thought it'd be a good solid conversation, something to talk about. So
yeah,
and that's MC member responsibility, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, like you said, it's coming from a few things we've seen throughout the year, and we kind of want to cue into people and kind of get them to help us take responsibility for that with some personal responsibility.
For sure. Yeah, 100% agree. Judas says, what's up? What's going on, Judas? Yeah, I agree. I think this is a big thing. And I would say that it's a good thing to talk about because especially when we have prospects in the motorcycle club and we have hang-arounds, right?
Yeah.
You have hang-arounds, and then you're officially prospecting for the club. And then if you can become a member of the club, right, and be a patch brother of the club, then you're a member. But those responsibilities in each of those categories change a little bit. And so I think it's easy, especially for new members to still a little bit be in that prospect mode, right? Is just keep my mouth shut and, do what I'm told kind of thing, right? Not all prospects are like that, but I think it's common for prospects to be like that because they're just told to listen and observe and do all that. So maybe when new members do see something that should be correct in the club, maybe they're a little bit more bashful or shy about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a good topic, so we can kind of get into it. What issues have you seen with that in the motorcycle club world or in our club from your experience?
So where I would like to lead off with is that I've seen all kinds of problems, right? And I've seen, you might be a new member, a new patched member. You might be a prospect. You might be dealing with another chapter's party, and their event, and you may see a situation and you're just unsure with how to deal with it. And if dealt with incorrectly, can lead to some serious problems or make a small problem into a bigger one. So what I want people to do is just sit back and think and for one, start off with if you see a problem, fix a problem. But on top of that, you need to know what your resources are and what the appropriate steps would be, for any given situation. Some of these situations might be that you're at a club event or a club gathering. Let's use a barbecue, for example, right? And that this event's a little bit more family oriented, and you may see someone that is a patch member drinking in excess, or a patch member's family member just drinking in excess and getting a little wild. You gotta wonder what is the best way to handle this situation. In my opinion, one of the worst ways to handle that situation is to stay silent and then talk to your brothers on the sideline and just give your opinions, not the facts. And then, like, realistically, they could ask you, well, did you do anything to fix that situation or remedy it? But one of the worst things you can do is just, sideline talk and make that situation worse. So, what I would want someone to do is to sit back and think uh, how that situation can be handled better.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine about relationships the other day, and she was talking to me about all these issues, and she's like, I'm just kind of a pleaser, and I just like to kind of go along to get along type of thing. But it creates these issues in her relationship, right? And so one of the things of advice I told her is, hey, why don't you just, like, if they say something to you that you don't appreciate, like, why do you let the issue keep going on? Like, why don't you say, like, hey, no, that's not the case, right? It's like resolve it on the spot. And how much easier, does that make, resolving conflict than
Yeah.
letting it pass because you're kind of just going along with the crowd, and then getting together afterwards and be like, I actually wasn't okay with that. And then making it like kind of a bigger issue or a more awkward issue to deal with. And it kind of just like grows, it festers as time goes on. Right. And
Mhm.
so I think what you're talking about is, hey, as a brother in this club, it's your responsibility to be proactive, right? Is if you're wearing the motorcycle club patch on your back, you're wearing the family crest of the club. So what does that make you, right? That makes you a guardian of the club. That makes you a protector of the club. That makes you an ambassador of the club. And do you really want people to be acting like an idiot, wearing the club's patch, or
Yeah.
disrespecting what the club means to you, or disrespecting what the club means to all of our brothers, right? Is be proactive about fixing those things, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, fix that situation, now, address it now. Everyone, like, you can realize that, we're all full grown adults. You're a man, you can step up and take the knowledge that you have and the experience that you have, or lack thereof, and know where to go. If you are lacking that knowledge, then you should know someone that you can talk to that's there. If you're just a hang around, you may have a sponsor that's there. Go talk to your sponsor. If you're a prospect, you may have a mentor that's there. But deal with the situation now. Don't let it fester. And that goes across the board. With any problem. If you start to wait and you talk to your brothers later, and like you were saying, if it starts festering, it does more than that. It festers and it grows. It starts creating divides, and a lot of clubs, that has developed to chapters being lost, members being lost, and we can stave that away by encouraging people to deal with the situation now. If
Yeah.
they see that problem, fix it. Not everyone else may. It doesn't mean that it's not a problem if it's not being handled. It just may mean that it hasn't been seen yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important to remember, right? Is like every member is a steward of the club. And it makes me think, like, I think I'm pretty good about bringing up issues and resolving it. But like, what are some things that are getting in people's way from resolving it, right? Some people just might not have that personality type to address, conflict right when it happens, right? Just like my friend, she's just a go along to get along personality, even though it bugs her. Some people might be those type of personality types, and that's just
Mhm.
harder for them to address things right away. Some people might feel like, oh, I'm just a newer member, right? Or I'm just a prospect, and maybe that's not my, position to make that correction, right? Some people
Mhm.
might say like, oh, I know that's probably not right, but like, I'm not sure exactly what the bylaws say about that. So maybe it's a lack of knowledge and you need to educate yourselves, right? If it's a lack of knowledge, then you need to educate yourself. Like you need to know if the bylaws are the governing document, or the motorcycle club, then you need to know the bylaws in order to stand on something when you're giving correction to other members, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are probably like some big things. It's just like it's not who people are. They don't feel like they're the person to do it because they're a newer member or they're not a leader in the chapter, or they're not an SAA, right? And they're like, oh, the SAA should be doing that. Yeah, but you're the one that's there.
Yeah.
So you make
So
the
in that
correction,
situation,
right?
yeah.
So
In that situation, what I would recommend is someone to do, right, is to one, take a little bit of a self-evaluation. Do you really feel like this is wrong? To what and to what extent is it wrong, right? And then step two is to identify someone to talk to. And if you don't know the bylaws, that how they address it, like you may be a prospect learning the bylaws, you may be a hang around. Now, I'm not saying go ask someone what the bylaws are, but if you feel that you've identified a problem, and you've identified someone you could talk to about it, go and talk to them, ask them questions like, "Hey, I've identified," like going back to the barbecue example. I see this guy. He's incredibly intoxicated, like, and he's kind of just flirting with so and so's girl. Is that okay with you guys? Does this seem normal? Is that a problem? And they'll, any man will educate you on the correct answer. And if they don't know the answer, they'll know how to go get it,
yeah,
But now the other end of that is like, let's say that is something that isn't a problem for the situation. Like someone was getting a little too intoxicated and, you're worried about it. And then you're just wondering, is this club, like, is it all about drinking? And now that's festering in your mind and, playing over and over again, when in reality, there could have been someone that identified that same problem you did and you didn't realize it, but now that guy's being taken home and being taken care of. And there was a resolution to that situation, but you didn't ask and you didn't address it. So now you've got this non-issue that's stirring around in your head, you know?
yeah, no, I agree, right? If you're not checking, if you're not doing something about it, like whether that's you personally addressing that individual or whether it's you using the chain of command, kind of like what you were talking about, right? If you're a prospect or a probie, going to your mentor. If you are a new member and you feel like, hey, I don't know that guy well enough to correct him, or maybe he's a leader and I don't want to rock the boat. Like go in and talk to somebody who has seniority, and push that idea off them. Go find your chapter SAA and be like, hey, SAA, like, I know that this is your thing, but I saw this and like, I feel like something should be done about it. Do you feel like, what do you feel like is the best way for, us to correct this? Right.
Yeah.
Whether that's doing that right away, or maybe it's just like, I also do agree that I think things that should be taken care of as soon as possible. Right. Sometime that's right then and just say, hey, knock that off. Right. That's easy. It's done. It's over with. And most people I think would respond to that. Like, oh shit. Yeah. I was being a dumb. Right.
Yeah.
I do think that there's some like times where it's just like time and place, right?
Yeah.
Is like, if you're doing something that's messed up, I don't want to embarrass you in front of like a bunch of your brothers, right? Like I can just pull you aside and have that conversation and we can address that,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to embarrass people in front of their families or in front of, their brothers. And if there's something that needs to be corrected right then and there, do it. But sometimes if there's a time and a space, just make sure it's happening quick, right?
Yeah.
Because the longer that goes on, the more of an issue it becomes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like you said, like I think the key word in there, was, as soon as possible, right? So possible may not be immediate. Possible as soon as possible may be tomorrow for that situation, right? So like you said, some situations may need that time, but you addressing it and seeing it and then recognizing, even if it did happen tomorrow or next week, but you see a fix to a situation that you brought up, now it's not something to fester over. You've talked to someone about it and you have someone to go and check in with to see like, hey, how did that situation go? Has anything happened? Has anything been corrected? And then on top, with all that being said, and there's a whole other side to this, right? And I think with that personal responsibility of being able to go, take care of a situation that you see is also personal accountability. So when you are someone that's being corrected, that you like, if someone comes up to me and be like, "Hey, man, you're drinking too much. You're getting a little too wild. You know, it's going a little too far." Instead of me being like automatically right off the bat, be like, "Oh no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it." If I'm being approached with it, I need to at least have the level of responsibility and that accountability to look at myself and honestly ask myself, like, am I okay? Or is this a problem since I'm being, approached? The fact that I'm being approached, I need to acknowledge that, it may be an issue, you know?
Hey,
So
that's
with
happened to me. That's happened to me when I've been a leader. That's happened to me when I've been a leader in the Army. That's happened to me when I've been a leader in the motorcycle club. I don't think anybody, is exempt from that, right?
yeah,
Be like, hey, we're just human and we make our own mistakes. But yeah, you're right. Like, I need to be better, right? I need to focus on fixing that. So
yeah,
Judas brings up a good point. He says, he similar experience when he was a probie in the fire department and he didn't have that rank on his crew. He said the problem was, when he wasn't a probe anymore, that he still was kind of in that mindset of not kind of bringing things to the forefront of people's mind that need to be fixed or resolved. And he says, looking back, he realizes, that wasn't right. Kenny asks the questions. He says, what happens when your brother won't change? And what's going on? And what if you bring up an issue and it gets turned back on you, right?
So yeah. My let me fix this real quick.
Yeah,
My
I've got you when you do technical difficulties. So I think that's a good point, Kenny. And I think at the end of the day, you got to make a decision, right? What are your values? What are your morals, right? And what are you going to stand for? Are you going to stand for what you believe in and what's your right, even though it might rock the boat? Yeah, maybe. Let's see if it strikes back on. All right, you got everything fixed, brother? Sweet.
Yeah. I'll get that fixed for me. But anyway, with what you were saying, like with Kenny's comment there, what that comes down to is protocol, and that comes down to procedure, and that comes down to the situation. That's a very broad question for a very, serious outcome of someone being forced out. I would say that before anyone would ever be forced out, that no matter what club you're in, I would imagine that every resource and every tool had been used, to remedy that situation. Whether that be going to your SAA, whether that being some disciplinary action being taken. But I know from personal experience that I know on our end that we would make sure that we use every resource and every tool,
Yeah, I can't speak, to the organization of someone being forced out, but I can tell you, for our club that there is a process for that. There's a voting process that has to happen with disciplinary actions. There's an appeals process if you feel like, you were wrongly accused of something or forced out. I would say that sounds like a disciplinary action to me. But one or two guys can't just force somebody out of the club once they're a full member in our club. There's a process to it. And we kind of have our own little justice system, in our bylaws. So
yeah, and like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, hey, Scooby, you said it's been a long time. It has. Sorry, holidays kept us busy. And then Judas brings up a point here. You want to touch on that one, Stripe?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it will be, I would say that would be the next step escalation above a immediate discussion. Like step one would be an immediate correction. Like I go up to someone and correct them on, like, hey man, you need to dial back your drinking. You're getting a little too wild, right? If it continues further and more action is needed, then they may You may be requested to sit down with your SAA, with your president, both of them together, your VP, whatever your procedures may be. But you may have a little bit more of a formal talking to, a little bit more firm, and maybe some official warnings. And then it all depends on you and the situation where it goes from there. But that kind of goes with the personal accountability. You got to hold yourself accountable to those situations too if you're on the receiving end. And then I feel like it's everyone's personal responsibility to make sure that it is dealt with in a timely manner.
Yeah.
I really want to step away from that, festering that you were talking about. That's one of the things that just drives me absolutely nuts, is that when people stand by and they take on habits that lead to festering and toxicity, and essentially, that rotten apple in the basket.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the unique things about a motorcycle club is like the leadership structure that motorcycle clubs have, right? It's very similar to the military. The militaries have, leadership structure. Part of it is the decision-making process, right? And part of it is the disciplinary, process. And some of those go together. Someone's got to make a decision about, keeping people in line. Yeah. And the MC is no different. We have our own leadership structure, and, the leader that's the most in line with keeping good order and discipline in the MC is a sergeant at arms, right? And so I think that would be part of the escalation in this, right? Is if it's not something that you can resolve, or maybe it's something you just don't feel comfortable resolving, is go to your SAA, find your SAA and be like, hey, SAA, like I saw this and I don't feel good about it. And these are the reasons why. Maybe it's against bylaws. Maybe, hey, I don't think that he should be treating, a member that way or someone's family member that way. Or, hey, I think this guy, did something that breaks the values or rules of the MC. At that point, you can discuss on the SAA how that's going to be handled. Maybe he's like, hey, don't worry about it. I got it. Maybe he's like, I'm not going to get involved, but you go correct him right now. Right. Maybe he's going to go, hold on a second. Let me go talk to the P and we're going to come up with a decision. Or maybe he even's like, hey, this isn't my guy in my chapter. This isn't my event. Like, I'm going to go talk to the chapter SAA who's, in charge of this event, and we'll get this resolved. Right. Yeah. Maybe it's, an issue where it's involving members of a couple of different chapters. And he's like, hey, this isn't my call. Like, I'm going to escalate this to the state SAA or the national SAA or whatever it is in your club. Right. And so I do think that for different issues, there is an escalation that you can take things to if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself. Or maybe it's just not your position or your role to get involved.
Yeah. And
but
if
you don't ever say anything, that problem won't ever be resolved. And so it's always your responsibility as a member to act, whatever that action is.
Yeah. And asking another member for advice on how to handle this situation is different than, brewing toxicity and discussing it. There's a difference there, me addressing a problem that I have with another member, like, hey, how do you think I should handle this, is different than me calling him 2 days later and griping about it, and if someone comes to me with a situation a week after the event, 2 weeks, whatever it may be, one of my first thoughts would be, well, did you do anything to, fix the situation, or did you just watch the problem remain, essentially becoming part of the problem? And well, if he's like, well, I just sat there, I figured I'd talk to someone eventually, and now here we are 2 weeks later discussing it. Well, then nothing's been fixed, so.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Judas is hitting it on the head again. Like, be proactive and just be upfront and handle it as soon as possible. And Judas says straight up face-to-face leads to less conflict. It's like, if I don't like something you do and you're sitting right next to me, why am I going to wait to worry about that till tomorrow when I could be like, hey, dude, knock it off. Like, that's not cool. Like, that takes me 5 seconds and the issue's fixed.
Yeah.
And then I think what Judas is talking about is like the toxicity that happens when that issue is not just fixed face to face, and all of a sudden it becomes like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to go talk about it with my buddy over here tomorrow, and we're just going to sit here and bitch about it, and then all of a sudden it's going to become this problem, and we're creating issues in our club. Then we're adding to the issue. Not only did we just notice a problem, but we noticed a problem and we made a bigger problem out of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, if I've got a problem with member A, right, and I go talk to B, C, D, and everyone but member A, and then another problem arises, and I again go talk to B, C, and D, then essentially all I'm doing is talking shit. You know,
Yeah.
I'm spreading my bad view of member A to C, D, and everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm just spreading toxicity at that point. And like Judas said, it's just essentially talking shit behind someone's backs at that point. You know?
Yeah. And so I think that yes, it should be handled as soon as possible. I think face to face is best, whether that's face to face with the observer that saw it as a member, or whether it's a face to face with the SAA. I definitely think that's the right course of action down that road. But let's talk about how to make corrections, because there's a right and a wrong way to make corrections too. And I think, hey, I'll just be honest. I've struggled making corrections in my time as a leader, right? And during my years in different positions in the military, and in the motorcycle club, I've learned a lot about corrections that I've made. How did people, take those corrections? Okay, that's not exactly, what I wanted you to get out of that correction. I didn't want to come across that way. Maybe I need to do some personal reflection on myself and try to focus on things that I can do to make my, correction that I give other people better, right? Yeah. Or corrections that I've received from people and being like, man, that dude was a dick about that, right?
Yeah.
Or being like, hey, that guy handled that correction very tactfully, I respect that, right?
Yeah. Well,
I think about that as do you have any tips for people that are trying to make corrections with other brothers that they see in their chapter or another chapter, or even a leader in their chapter?
Yeah, I would say number one is definitely being tactfully, and then tactful about it, because like you're saying, I had someone come up, and my very first correction with the club experience was handled, in my opinion, now that I'm a little older and a little wiser, was handled incorrectly. I was approached with something to correct my writing, and it was something pretty minor, and it was handled to an excess level of an aggression, right? So my very first reaction was to come back with aggression. And then a few days later, I did some research into the topic, found out I was wrong when I could have stopped and listened from the beginning. But, aggression can bring aggression. So you got to do it tactfully, right? And then if you are correcting someone, there's a couple things I would bring with you with that correction. One would be exactly what the problem is that you're correcting. And two would be the bylaw, if it's applicable to a bylaw. And three would be the solution to that problem. If you can bring a solution to the problem with a good attitude, you'll be walking away with the problem solved without it going any further than that right then.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the biggest thing is the intro, right? to your correction is not coming up across too aggressive or too in your face or too abrasive, because all that does for people is and especially we're a bunch of type A personalities where we're all just dude, no, fuck you, right? I don't need this from you, right? Mm-hmm. But if you come out and be hey, I got something important I need to talk to you about, I like you as a person, but let's talk, because there's things we need to talk about, right? That's a very different intro than be what the F are you doing, man? It's very aggressive. And I mean, in the military, you get more of the aggressive side of it, right? But you kind of get a little bit of PTSD with it, start twitching when people start talking to you that way and getting pissed off, right? I mean, I know I do. So I think, how you handle it, you're talking about being tactful about it. I think kind of going into it nice and smooth, but also like don't beat around the bush. Like just be straight up honest. Like, hey, so and so came to me and this is what they told me, right? I'm here to make sure, like, check the facts on this. Did this happen? And let's address it, right?
Yeah. And like, so one situation, one hypothetical I wanted to cover was related to, let's see here, Kenny's comment. I'm not sure if you saw that. He says, what
This
if
one?
the situation, yeah. So, if you see a situation like that, one thing I wanted to address is that's one of the situations where you got to sit back and ask yourself what the best way to handle that situation would be. For me, I would say this wouldn't cover all examples of this, but um, I would say number one would be approaching the patch members, the patch member of the wife or girlfriend. Now, if I'm in a situation where I can't really be talking to him about that or uncomfortable with it, like if he's an officer or if I'm a prospect, it kind of goes along the same lines. Go talk. If you're a prospect, go talk to your mentor. If you're a hang around, go talk to your sponsor. If you are a new patched member, talk to one of your brothers and get their assistance with how to approach that situation. And then more than likely he would send you to the SAA depending on the situation, and he would more than likely go and talk to the member of the wife, because I would almost say that almost in any situation it would be more respectful to approach the member over the spouse, and that's my opinion at least.
Yeah, and I would say that I would feel comfortable handling that like man to man with another person in my club, another brother. Would I be extremely disappointed? I would, right? I would feel comfortable handling that man to man, but I would say that that's probably going to be an SAA deal, right? One way or another, it's going to be an SAA deal because, and this is why I say it's like not to be like a rat, not to be an asshole, but in our club, you make an oath. And in that oath, like you are specifically breaking, by being involved in inappropriate relationships with another brother's, significant other.
Yeah.
And so that's a big issue for me. It's like, how can I believe in this brotherhood? How can I believe in this loyalty if I can't trust my brothers?
Yeah.
Like they swore an oath and they're breaking it right now, right? And so I feel like that's an SAA deal because if that never gets brought to the chapter, even if I can handle it individually, I'm going to go to my SA and be like, hey, SA, like, so I dealt with this already, but this happened, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't want those repeat offenses to like just keep happening and he's just going to do it with somebody else.
Oh, yeah,
right?
100%.
It's like transparency is important for the change and for the correction, in my opinion.
Yeah. If you're using the extremes with the wife, like if there's some adultery or anything like that, I would almost say 100% immediately go to the SAA with that, like right off the bat, so that can be dealt with swiftly.
Hey, Kenny says thank you. I was hoping that would be your answer. You're welcome, Kenny.
Now, I mean, like if it's a member's wife that's around the corner that's puking and about passing out, then the first scenario I gave is a little bit more suitable for that. And I wasn't necessarily given an example for the extreme of like an adultery situation or something like that. That's a little bit more severe. And like you were saying, go directly to the SAA on that. And that's my opinion. Go right to the SAA if you see a situation like that.
Yeah, and honestly, even anything close, right, is like
flirting.
If you're not keeping your brothers honest, then what happens is like then people just start becoming more comfortable in those situations, and then they start taking things further and further. No, like if you think it's inappropriate, chances are it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
So correct it.
If you're feeling that way,
don't do that. Like, what are you thinking? Like, knock that off. Like that handles it. It prevents the situation from ever going anywhere where it needs to go. Right.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. And I think, It's a really important topic, and like these corrections go across the board. It could be you correcting someone on their writing style, you correcting someone at an event, you correcting someone one on one. Like all these, tools can help. I think one of the most important things is to familiarize yourself with the bylaws and your tools, your resources, and who to speak with. Who, if you're at an event for a chapter outside of your own, you should know right off the bat who you should be talking to. If your SAA is not there, if their SAA is not there, if they only have one officer there, like you should know right off the bat and be comfortable with who you're going to go talk to. And I would want everyone to feel comfortable talking to people about these problems and not stowing them away and forming, even if you're not talking to anyone, you're just keeping this opinion to yourself, you're still brewing that toxicity within yourself. And it could be stayed by dealing with it.
That's not worth it. I mean, I've had instances in the club where I found out somebody, was upset for me, for something I said or something I did. And I was completely unaware of it. Like this is like hard feelings that, were harbored that I wasn't aware of even. And like how simpler would it have been if I would have just known about it and took care of it sooner than later? But like if you can't communicate with people, how are things ever going to get resolved?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would always say, hey, like this is your family, these are your brothers, whether you know them super well or whether they're a brother from another chapter or something. Hey, just handle it. Like man up, communicate, like let's address things and let's focus on like the important stuff and not focus on all the on the drama and the ill feelings, right?
Yeah, and like you're saying, like if you feel like something's wrong, just talk to someone.
But I really liked what you said about the bylaws, right? Is that's one of the reasons why we stress knowing and understanding the bylaws is because that's the law of the club. And how else are you going to fix or address something if you don't have like the law of the club to back you up? And so I would say
Yeah.
like, hey, if I was an SAA or I was a president and a member was using the bylaws to correct another member, even if that other member is in leadership, he's correcting, like how can he be wrong?
Yeah.
Like it's SAA that can use the bylaws, to keep the president honest, right? And so the bylaws are really, where it's at as far as being able to stand on the ground that you're trying to correct people on. If it's in the bylaws, like you're golden as far as making that correction, in my opinion, and you should.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah, but
patch
no,
member of the club, you should make that correction.
but according to bylaws with someone, like also with that being said, make sure, like you said, make sure you know the bylaws. And if you come in and correct and you do it wrong on top of that, you could be causing a problem for yourself too.
And make sure you're using it in the right context, right? Like don't try to like bend the bylaws to like execute your will. Like
Yeah.
the
It's not
bylaws
gonna
are there. How are most people going to read it? If you have a question, maybe you should ask some of your brothers, like, hey, I read this in the bylaws. I think it means this, but like, what's your interpretation of it? Like, do that before you like misinterpret the bylaws and use it against another brother.
Yeah. And like one thing I want everyone to know is that, you know, everyone has had a correction made to them. I've had a correction made to me. I've seen a correction made to just about everyone. So, I mean, if you're having one made on you, don't overthink it. Don't overdo it. Like just take it, research it, learn, and roll. Don't stew. Just roll on.
Yeah. Judas wants to know, maybe you want to answer this since you're in the SAA currently. Will you address hangarounds and prospects being accepting to corrections during the period of their MC career?
Um, I think the best way to answer that would be to mostly say the way you handle correction if you're a hangaround or a prospect will be evaluated. I'm not going to say do this or do that because we're going to want to see how you react. and whether you're accepting, whether you're, abrasive, whether you take it to heart, whether you learn, or whether you ignore it. Um, Now, if you are a prospect and a hang around and you're wanting to make a correction, my advice to you would be to make sure you're very researched into the correction, make sure you're versed, or you get advice. If you are a hang around, like I was saying earlier, make sure you get advice from your sponsor, whoever that is already in the club has brought you in. Get there where you go and make a correction, and possibly allow that member to go make that correction. If you are a prospect, my advice would be that you talk to your mentor, identify whether it is a problem or not, maybe even go and look up the bylaws real quick and figure out where this problem fits into the bylaws. And also get that advice from your mentor. That's why they're there, to guide you through those situations. And if they're not guiding you through that situation and they're just leaving you in the wind, um, my advice would be to research the bylaws and also talk to. That really depends on the situation, though, doesn't it? So that could be very broad. But your mentor will give you the best advice for sure.
I think my answer to this might be a little bit different perspective, and my answer is like the way that you receive correction when you're a prospect or a probationary member, a probie, should be the same way that you receive correction as a member, right? I mean, that's one of the things I feel like we're testing for is like, how are you going to take correction?
Yeah, you'll be
if all of a sudden you become a member and you don't take correction well anymore, like that's a problem. Mm-hmm. Like that's an attitude adjustment. Like you're being too prideful at that point. Like maybe you weren't ready to become a member, because that's one of the things I feel like we are testing for as being a prospect is like, are these people going to take the things that we are giving them, and are they going to be able to learn? Like, are they going to be able to adapt? Like in the military, people get kicked out of the military towards the beginning when they join because it's like a failure to adapt, right? They're just like, they're gone. It's not like they're out of the military bad, not dishonorable discharge, just like you're a failure to adapt. Like we don't want to accept you because you're not for us, right?
Yeah. 100%.
That's the same reason why we have a prospecting process and a hang around process, is so that we can weed through some of these people so that the members that we're getting are the ones that, hopefully the ones that are becoming the members are the ones that can make that correction well. Like are going to be the humble ones to be like, hey, you're right, brother. This family means more to me than like my own ego.
100%. And like you said, you will be evaluated on how you take that correction. And it's not just while you're hanging around, because like you said, if you fail to adapt and then like if you become a patch member and then now you're receiving correction, it's you're not done being evaluated. Where I'm constantly being evaluated with how I will handle my corrections. If I am being corrected on something and I'm just coming out being incredibly abrasive every single time, I can tell you I'm not going to succeed in the club or with my brothers. I'm going to fall a weight on off to the side, just because I can't listen, and just because I can't hear, or I'm thinking I'm always right. You need to take that. That's what I was talking about before, taking that personal accountability as well and looking inward, and take that correction and roll with it. Don't be hurt by it.
So as a leader, I mean, you're an SAA right now, right?
Yeah.
As an SAA, how would you feel if you were at an event, or let's say we were stopped after ride and you saw another member giving correction to another member?
If I saw giving friction, that's something I would act on immediately.
Correction.
Oh, correction. Well, if I saw a member giving a correction to another member, I would stop and listen, but I'd feel proud. I would love to see that. That's something we're striving for. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I want to see how it's delivered, and I would want to see how it's received. but I would have nothing against it. I would evaluate the situation and see if the proper respects were made, if the proper steps were taken, and if it was done tactfully. You know, I may have something to say if it was a standard patch member making a correction on a president, depending on what that is and what that situation is. But beyond that, I'm going to evaluate it for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And there's a couple of things that I liked about what you said is like you're listening in because part of that is like you're curious what's going on, but the other part of that is like making sure everything's are kosher, right?
Yeah.
So in the motorcycle club world, you know, we have protocols. We have protocols on how we interact with other clubs, you know, how you make introductions to other clubs. But then there's traditions, you know, within our own clubs. And I feel like the tradition that we hold is that, and I hope that a lot of motorcycle clubs hold, and I can imagine they do, is the respect from like one patch to another, right? And are you being respectful? Because I've seen the correction made where it's just like in your face, 100% not respectful. And it's just like they're being an asshole about the correction from a brother to a brother, right? From one patch holder to another patch holder. And for me, it's not about that. And that's not how I would want to see correction from brothers in the club that I'm in, right? It's like they aren't equal to you. It doesn't matter if you're a leader or not. Like they've earned that same right to wear the family crest that I have. And so can we treat each other with respect to resolve issues? Like I think the answer should be yes, right? If it's unresolvable, then yeah, maybe escalate to the SA. Hey, maybe you gotta take things and resolve it another way, right? But if I came across a member being respectful about another member, being like, hey, you know, I saw you did this, I care about you, man, but like this is what our bylaws say, or you know, this is the right thing to do, I'd be like, dude, right on. Like that's what's going to make the club succeed is people caring enough to be stewards of the club. Like you wear the family crest, you're a member of the club. When you become a member, this is your club now. Take ownership over it. Like shit that you own, do you take care of it or do you neglect it? Like I want my brothers to take care of their shit. You know? I want my brothers, if they have a bike, I don't care what kind of bike it is or how much they pay for. I just want them to take care of it. Right? That shows me a lot about who they are as a person. Like if they have a wife or spouse, they have kids, like how do they treat, you know, their wife, their spouse, their kids? How do they treat their brothers? Like I view it all the same way. Is like if they care about the club, you take care of it. And the way that you take care of it, the way that you protect it is if you see something that's not right, fix it. Like be proactive. Even if it's not like a moral issue, if you see something that could improve in the club, speak up. If we're doing things one way right now and you're like, hey, there's a better way we can do this, and you just shut up, like what are you doing? You're not a part of this club because you're not actually adding anything to it. It's like every member of this club should be adding something to it, whether it's at their local chapter level, whether it's at the state level, whether it's at the member level, whether it's in their leadership position. Is like, what are you doing to better the club? Seriously, ask yourself that question. What are you doing to better the club? What are you doing to be a better brother today?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the mindset I think we're talking about. And this is the same mindset we're trying to get in prospects' heads when they're a prospect. And now we're talking about at the member level. Like, you're a member now. Your responsibilities are greater. Like, up your game a little bit.
100%. You know, and I like what you were saying about, you know, we're all a steward to the club, you know, because, you know, I'd rather someone correct me than let me walk around looking like an asshole, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm show a couple of these. James Beaver says, bro, I have a Sportster, but it's my baby. hell yeah, dude. Whatever bike you got, you better love it because it's yours. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Judah says, I had that mindset from the second I became a hang around. This is my club because one day it will be my club. I believe all probies should have that mindset. Dude, 100%. It's like, that's the mindset that I look for. Like, do you care about this? Because I care about it.
Yeah. If you don't care about it and you're just, you don't care at all, I'd almost rather you talk to us. And if it continues like that, if you are so carefree and it means so little to you, then I'd rather you step away than to stay there and just spread that feeling to other people.
Yeah.
'Cause it will all spread.
The club is awesome. I'll just say this. Like, it's come a long way in the 6 years that we've been a club. Like, we're still a young club, but we've come a long ways. Like, the things I've seen brothers do for each other has been amazing to me, right?
Yeah.
It's like my wife had an emergency like a health emergency this week, something that came completely out of the blue, and just like the outpouring of love and text messages and phone calls and people asking what they can do for like me and my family, that's awesome. And I've seen it happen like for so many other people in the club. Like, this is truly a family. Like, these are truly people that care about you. Not only that, but like, not only are we a family, but we got to ride motorcycles together. We got to do all this cool stuff together. We have these tight knit bonds. Is like, be a part of it. Like, there's so much good things about the club. The least you can do is just do your job as a member and try to make the club a better place. Like, that's an easy job, Like, it's pretty simple when you look at it that way. Like, be a good brother, like, be a good family member to your brother's families, and try to make the club a better place. Like, what can you do just to make the club better? Like, that's pretty simple. Be proactive. You see something not right, it's probably not right. Fix it. Like, why do you need to wait for me to fix it?
And I really hope that everyone that's watching this and any of our members that are watching this, really listens to it and tries to figure out what situation they need to put this into practice. So I hope to see some changes in the future, and I hope to see some improvement, and I hope someone comes and corrects me. I hope to see some corrections out there on a personal level, on an official level, on any level. I'm hoping that we all help each other to be better, better members. So, and I hope they listen to everything we said.
Yeah. Kenny brings up a interesting point. He basically says, how can you not care and still hang around? Like, this is a family. I think that the thing is, Kenny, is like, everybody's not in it for righteous reasons. It's like some people just, are in it for self-serving reasons. It's like, oh, that's just cool, right? Being in a club is cool. What can the club do for me? No, it's not about that, right? Yeah, the patch is cool, but what makes it cool? Like, what makes it cool is that we're a family. Like, what makes it cool is you got trust, loyalty, and respect and brotherhood. Like, that's what makes it cool. And it's not about self-serving. Like, sometimes the club does serve you because you're in need. It's not about that, though. What are you doing on every day to give back to the club and give back to your brothers?
And I would say some members even, some of them are just on cruise. They've hit cruise control and they're just, on cruise. They don't have anything to do. They've lost. They may have lost interest for some reason, but now they're just floating on by, and starting to lose that caring feeling, and then they start to see these issues, and then they don't even realize they're doing it, and they just start to spread that toxic, festering problem without even realizing they're doing it. And that's sometimes what could happen when a member just stops caring.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree, Strike. And I think that this was a great topic that you brought up and wanted to talk about tonight. What are your closing thoughts or, advice for, your brothers at the club or people that are in other clubs that maybe have struggled with this?
To any of them would be my closing statement would be, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. You can talk to me. You can talk to your leadership. You can talk to your mentor. But if you have any questions or any thoughts, ask. And beyond that, my last piece of advice would be to go and read your bylaws.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest tool that you have at your disposal in order to make correction at any level, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, 100%.
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Strike. Hey, I appreciate it. And we'll have to get together and do another show soon and talk about something else good. So,
Yeah,
catch
no,
you later,
100%.
my man.
Yeah,
Have a
no,
good
I had a
night.
lot of fun. Enjoyed it. You have a good night.
Uh-huh.
All right, bye.
Bye. Hey, brothers, I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight on member responsibility. And it is a super important topic. And as a leadership in the club, we want to keep putting out videos that are going to be beneficial to the brotherhood and to the club. So if you have any things that you think would be good videos or things that you want us to talk about, that you think would be good conversations, just go ahead and post in the comments and we'll check it out, and hopefully we'll do a good show on it soon. Thank you everybody for getting on, participating. You had some great comments and great questions. Appreciate it. Love you guys. See you soon. Peace out.